All right, Savvy Crew, welcome to this week's installment of The Hours, coming to you live from Kansas City, Missouri, 45 minutes from the Basketball Hall of Fame at Kansas University, where they have not only just the grave of James Naismith, but some really cool experiences around basketball. So if you ever get a chance to go, I would highly, highly recommend it. This is an intermediate hours, as always. Ask me anything for our savvy coaching grow members, those who are committed to growing. Ask me anything via the app, in the hours thread, or in any of our other threads. Send me an email, send me film, and I will go over it in the hours. We also use the hours for live code coaching and feedback for all of our grow members that are going through our cohort. And last week we finished our 4-week cohort around how to set standards, how to define standards, how to hold the line on standards, and how to pass the torch on standards and let others own it. And when you can pass this torch, when other people carry the standard for you, that's when a standard becomes your culture. The end goal is to have a culture of shared ownership for how we do what we do, but it starts with you as the leader, as the visionary, setting the standard for your program. And your culture is what grows up around it. So we have a number of questions here today. I actually just asked for some additional questions on X, what is now Twitter. Really interested to see how that keeps going. And we'll be sharing the kind of a preview, if you will, of the 5 Qs for better teaching so that you have more effective practices that get results, games that get results, and allow you to have more fun doing it. As always, drop any questions that you have in the chat box. I've got my phone right here, and I'll be checking our YouTube live stream to be seeing any questions that come through in the YouTube live stream as well. So let me just first off and say welcome to everybody and ask you, if you're on the YouTube live stream, if you would please just drop your name so we know who's here watching live, and where you're dialing in from. And also, because this is primarily a Q&A, I want to start there. Any questions you have about anything basketball, coaching, leadership related, go ahead and drop your questions in there, please, if you would. And I look forward to answering those questions as well. Let me just get this one pulled up here on my phone so that I can watch here. Give me one moment. I've got to actually open it up. Same as you. There we go. Let me mute this thing, please. Perfect. Aaron, what's up, man? Good to see you. Benjamin, hello. I did get yours. I'm not too far from Kentucky. In fact, Benjamin, I just had one of my good friends in basketball, one of my basketball brothers from Louisville, Kentucky, Philip Morrison runs a program in Louisville called Hoops for Christ, was out here. Kevin, Indiana, Hoosier State. But if you, Benjamin, if you ever want to be connected with Phil, he does an awesome job, and is there in Louisville and runs a really good program out there in Louisville, Hoops for Christ. So would love for you to get connected with him as well, and I'd be more than happy to connect you. So go ahead and drop if you have any additional questions, any specific things that you would like me to hit on. Just go ahead and drop them into the chat box here on our live stream, and I'm going to dive in to a number of questions that we had come in over the week as well. Let me actually start with, I'm just going to go back to some direct messages that I got. I'm going to start with Ryan Emerson. So Ryan first is still doing some shooting stuff, is getting feedbacks on the videos, but Ryan asked this question. He said, hey, in transition, would you say the Rackers are more effective attacking the world or the high paint, the logo, from a 45-degree angle through the attack spot, or straight downhill from the center circle of the court? Now, as we all know, there's no absolutes in the game of basketball, but what I would suggest is we want our Rackers as often as possible to receive the ball as wide as possible, as close to the sideline. And there's a couple of reasons for this, and it's key for our rackers. We want our rackers to try to get their butt to the sideline as quick as possible so that they can sneak a peek. The best rackers actually sneak a peek before they receive the ball, and they can see where is there space, where is there a mismatch, am I open to hunt, where is there a seam to hunt, so they can catch it and attack immediately. So that's why we want them to catch the ball on the sideline. So therefore, if we're training them to do that, getting up the sideline and out to the sideline as quickly as possible, then inevitably, if they get the ball there the majority of the time, they're going to be then hunting the world, which is in the center of the court from the sideline. And the reason is this: basketball is a game of opposites, and most transition defenses are trained to get back to the paint and squeeze the middle of the floor. And so if we're dribbling up the middle of the floor, they're usually stacked up. Whereas when we declare a side of the floor, it makes it a lot easier for all of our other offensive teammates to get space. It causes the defense to shift, and it allows us to find more seams. So the initial attack is going to be from the sideline through the 45 to the attack spot. Now, when our rackers hit the attack spot, they've got a decision to make. And on their initial attack, when they go from, let's say they catch the ball on the left sideline, when they catch the ball on the left sideline, they rip towards the middle of the floor, attacking with their inside hand, their right hand. Now they're making a decision here. Can I continue to hunt the world? Or does the defense slide over and cut me off, which allows me to make one direction change, get down the lane line on the left-hand side of the floor? Or neither. Like, I can't get to the world. I can't make a direction change to get to the rack. Then we want them to cross the street, because crossing the street in transition with the dribble or the pass really moves the defense. Declare a side, make the defense commit. Cross the street, make the defense move. Then we will still have advantage basketball on a kick back to the dragon or right into our 11-second action or whatever. So that would be the 3 steps I would encourage everyone to really attempt to incorporate. Same side hunt. World, no. Down the lane line, no. Cross the street, yes. And that cross the street can happen with the dribble, or that cross the street can happen with a quick pass back to the rack, or the worst, or a quick pass to your trailing dragon without a hunt. Now, the worst thing that can happen, and is happening a lot out here in Kansas City with these college players that we're working with, is they can't get to the world. They can't beat the defender in one move and get down the lane line. And so they keep dancing for 2 and 3 seconds, making multiple dribble moves with their eyes down, holding the entire offense hostage, and allowing the defense to load up and get set. It takes too long for our rackers to recognize that they can't get to the rack to flow directly into across the street. And crossing the street is a great way to get into your 11-second action as well. So that would be hopefully some tips and some answers for all of our rackers here. Let me switch back and see if we have any live follow-up questions. If at any point you've got a live follow-up question on any of the things that I'm sharing, please type them into our chat box, and I will definitely get back to them for you. I had a good learning experience this week to continue to share some helpful things, I think, as I've been leading coaches this week. And you as head coaches, some of you new head coaches, some of you head coaches with new teams, it's going to be imperative that you can clearly and concisely lead your players and your coaches into the objectives of each role. So I've had 3 high-level coaches out here with me this week, very high-level coaches, college coaches, state coaches of the year, professional coaches get flown all around the world to teach, and they're very intrigued with these roles. Like, hey, these roles make sense. And one coach said, Tyler, can you give me the NBA example or the NBA facsimile of each of these roles? Because he wanted to really picture, like, okay, who plays this way? Like, what do you really want this type of role to be like? And while we know that each player has their own strengths and weaknesses, I think that was a very good question for a clear answer. So let me run down some examples. So rackers would be like a Luka Doncic, Jalen Brunson, Ja Morant. Right, these are all racker types. Like, they are elite at getting to the rack and finishing at the rack whenever they want to. Giannis is actually a really great example of a racker, especially in transition. I would say that Devin Booker has been a racker in transition quite a lot. Interestingly enough, the Golden State Warriors haven't necessarily had a racker. Um, Jordan Poole actually is probably the best example of a racker for them. Um, but that would be it's not your traditional point guard, and it's not someone that's going to, it's not necessarily a Chris Paul type who's going to set it up and get right into his action. This is really someone that's putting pressure on the defense, so it's a different approach. So I said those would be examples of rackers. I think Jamal Murray actually is a good example of a racker. Jimmy Butler is a great example of a racker. Um, all right, he's like, okay, dragon. What's your ideal dragon? I mean, there's different types. Jokic is a great example of a dragon. Like they play through him a lot as he drags behind the play, whether it be through handoff game or ball screen game. But Bam Adebayo is a great example of a dragon as well. And he's more the dragon that's a grab and go dragon. But even if he doesn't grab and go, they're getting it back to him. They're playing through him a lot at the attack spots, top of the key, dribble handoff, zoom game, all that stuff. So that's a great example of a dragon. Okay, what's a great example of a lock? Your lock is going to be more of a shooter and probably less of a defensive stopper. A great lock example would be like a Duncan Robinson or Max Strus type. Michael Porter Jr. is a good example of a lock, not a lockdown defender, but they're really trying to stretch the D. They're hunting that 3-point line. Okay, and the locks usually hit that left corner in transition. So it would be a good example of your wolf or your best on-ball defender. This is your best defensive stopper. They're on the floor because they got to guard the other team's best perimeter player. A lot of times it's their primary ball handler, and they usually go into the right corner. But they're a great defender. So a PJ Tucker is a great example of a wolf. Like he's on the floor for his defense, and he's developed into a somewhat solid 3-point shooter. Pat Bev is a great example of a wolf. Okay, these are players. Contavious Caldwell Pope is a good example of a wolf. Primary defender, and can knock down and off the catch three. So those are your wolf types. And then finally, like what's a porch player, or what some coaches are calling their rabbits. The ones that are getting to the short corner, trying to put pressure on the rim, setting all your step up screens. Like a Clint Capella is a great example of a player like that. A Nick Claxton is a great example of a player like that. Um, Jared Allen is a great example of a player like that. So limited offensive skill sets, but really good offensive rebounders, screen setters, and divers to the rim, good rim protectors on defense. So those are kind of hopefully some better direction. That was a question I got a lot this week from coaches that were with me out here, and they really were able to embrace those things. So hopefully that's helpful on that question. Okay, let me get to Benjamin's question here. We're 13 minutes in. Benjamin's like, hey man, get to my question, bro. All right, Benjamin. All right, Benjamin asked, could you teach cuts without the actual reps of doing them, and instead tell players off the ball to simply hunt space, resulting in them automatically making cuts from the corners, wings, flashing to the middle of the paint, and filling towards the ball? I would say yes and to that question, Benjamin. Could you teach cuts without reps? Yes. And I think that's great. Like you're teaching in a principle, hunt space. That's what layer 2 is, right? Space and hunt. And really, layer 2 is space and hunt and space and hunt and space and hunt and space and hunt infinitely, right? Space, hunt danger, like to be where you're dangerous. That's different for everybody. Hunt space. Hunt being dangerous, that's a cut, right? Hunt space. So like a blast cut is an example. A burn cut's an example. A shape up or a dance is an example. A flank is an example. Dragging behind penetration is an example. These are all examples of hunting space, and then hunting being dangerous, hunting where they can catch and score from immediately. So yes, now, if you only tell them and don't rep it and don't train it, it will take them a long time to get it. If you want them to get it faster, then you would train it. But here's the thing. It's really, it is foolish to train spacing off the ball without defense. Because that is it. Like the space is always dependent on how the defense is playing. And so, I mean, I think we can go 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, 4-0, 5-0 to talk about where we want them to go in transition. But once we get into space and hunt game and hunt and space game, then I think you at least need to have a guided defender there so they can start to scan the floor and learn what it means to hunt space. So one of the ways that we are doing it this week is just getting reps out of attack training. We're trying, the main things we're trying to prime our environment. And, we have our corner spot and our attack spot. We're initiating the ball from the porch. The porch player defends the corner. So on the offense's right-hand side of the floor, we might click up to the attack spot. Attack spot hunts. And defending the right-hand side of the floor, because they're in a deny position in our lock left, they're up the line, chest to ball denying. And when the corner gets unlocked because the hunt is over, either from an eye contact or a stop, they then burn. Now, it's scripted in that the defense is being told how to play defense, but it's reactionary in training reads in that the offense has to really work on their timing and spacing. Like, what is the proper space to stop on the hunt, to burn, et cetera, to not go late. And then on the left-hand side of the floor, and you could do this whatever you do defensively. Left-hand side of the floor, same thing, but the porch player clicks to the corner clicks up to the attack hunts. I don't care if they hunt world or hunt lane line, but that defender's gapping. And so as that defender gaps, the read is to blast. So as they skirmish over, corner blasts up to create more space or separation. That's where the space is in that sort of a situation. And when they're unlocked, the kick goes and they get to get their shot. Now, does defense ever make mistakes in drills? Yes, as you know. Do they ever deny when they should gap or gap when they should not? Yes. And so that's where some of the reading comes in. Like, yeah, we're scripting what they should do and we're training our defense as well. But there will be opportunities to read it across the board. If they gap too high or if they deny too low, there will always be places to read it, but they want to hunt space, and that is the principle. But I would also then rep it. The other thing that I did actually this week with this group in trying to teach them how to space and hunt, it's a great way to teach spacing initially to like if you're introducing a new concept to higher level players or you're teaching spacing to younger players, beginners, is give them advantage. So we played a ton of 4-on-3 flow with lots of transitions so that the offense could really learn how to hunt space. And when you have one defender down or you give the offense an advantage, the space becomes really obvious. And so it becomes easier to read. So then we progress from our 4-on-3 flow to 4-on-4 race games, full court. And that's another advantage to the offense. When you're playing 4-on-4 instead of 5-on-5, there's even more space. So it's like putting some training wheels on this thing. And then we finished up with 5-on-5, and our spacing and our hunting and our cutting was way better because we progressed through those advantage games in multiple quarters. All right, what questions do you have on that? Go ahead and drop them into the chat box here. I'm taking a look at it here on my phone. If you have any follow-up questions on that, feel free to ask them. I'm going to check for Twitter and grab a couple of see if there's any questions off of that one. And check yours as well. All right. All right, looks like we're tracking pretty well. Let me go back to a shooting question, and then I will share a little bit of a preview for what we have coming up for our teaching tools cohort, which I'm pumped about. I have a bunch of young coaches that I met out here and trained with our Origins basketball initiative that are actually heading out to be basketball missionaries, first in the Bahamas and then across the globe. And so many of them are going to be joining our cohort on teaching better. So I'm pumped about a new influx of coaches that we get to serve and train. Okay, shooting question. Pull it back up here. And this one's also from Ryan. And I don't have the ability to share my screen on this device here today. But I do want to share a celebration, a shout out. Ryan's has two players that have been going through the 28-day shooting challenge. And he's just been sharing some amazing celebrations. Let me pull one up and want to celebrate Ryan for the good work he's been doing. Um, Good work that he's been doing, and they are continuing to do as well. Okay, so here it is. I saw 11 for 17. I've just got a lot of loading going on here. There it is. All right, so celebrate Ryan for the work he's done, and his high schooler recently went 11 for 17 over a handful of games from the 3-point line. He's feeling a lot more confident. But the question is, we've been working with one player who has a lot of body movement as he goes into his release, and the question is, okay, we identify it, it's getting better, but it hasn't been eliminated. Like, how do we keep working on eliminating body movement? And I would suggest this: double the amount of tune shots you're getting in your workout and change the focus and objective from feet, hands, eyes, release, and just go all about posture. And here's 3 cues that I would work on posture. And cue number 1 is this: we want to load our hips, not our knees. Most players introduce way too much body movement, especially upper body movement, by when they bend their knees. Because when you bend your knees, your chest goes forward. And when your chest goes forward, your chest has to go back because it's in the way of lifting the basketball. But when we hinge our hips, actually hinge our hips back, inevitably that's going to lead to a little bit of knee bend, but primarily it's going to keep a nice tall posture. So that'd be number 1. Number 2 is get the ball tighter to your body when you load. Most players introduce a lot of body movement when the ball gets far away from their body, because then there's lots of drawing and swinging, all of which changes your balance and posture. It's the number 1 thing that I found that causes players to miss shots in real games is they don't have a still posture and tight core. They have a lot of movement. And then the more speed you introduce, or the more pressure you introduce, or the more movement you introduce, which hinders your balance, then it just exaggerates like a tree swaying in the wind. It's very, very difficult to shoot the ball consistently when your connection to the ground, feet through body, is moving. It introduces so many more variables. And if we were trying to be more consistent with our shot, we want to have less variables, be firmly rooted, be still, so that we're shooting from a stationary planted place. So that the number 2 is to be ball tight to your body, because as you know, when you swing something on a string around a center pole, right, that thing, that as it gets farther from the pole, it starts to move faster and pull on the pole more. Whereas when it's tighter to the pole, it doesn't pull on the pole as much. So the ball tighter to your body on your set and your lift, that will improve body balance as well. Here's the last one: is a way to train these things. Like, I would just get posture reps before real reps. So one of these that I really like is 3 drops. Okay, so we work on the hinging the hips, we work on ball tight to the body, load maybe we're from 15 feet, and we get an air drop. Obviously the ball's already there, and so it'd be a travel in a real game, but it's getting an airdrop. And the whole focus on the first airdrop is, can I drop my hips without changing my posture? Then the second airdrop, we airdrop and lift. And again, the focus is on, can I airdrop and lift the ball without any change in my posture, without raising my hips? Then on the third airdrop, I just try to duplicate the stillness of my body, airdrop, lift, fire. And then we will get 20, 30 reps on that, working our range and our distance with a focus on posture. So 3 drops is how I would really train anyone that has a lot of body movement. Now, the question: does your player have a lot of body movement? Do you have players that have a lot of body movement? And the answer is yes. The answer is yes, your players do. I have yet to see youth shooters, high school shooters, or anyone that's not an elite shooter that doesn't have a lot of body movement. It is probably the primary and first thing that I would look to address and fix if you really want to develop a better shooter. That is your answer, Ryan. I'll give a little video feedback on the actual shots of your players here later today when I can do a screen recording for you. So a reminder: continue to send me video of all these things, as I love giving video feedback, and I can see so much more in video than oftentimes coaches even know to ask. Okay. Let me check one more time for Twitter questions. All right, we got one here. Nice. This is for Daniel Pack, and I'm actually going to, for Daniel, I'm actually going to take this one live right now for him. Savvy Hours Answers. All right, just for this little section, I'm going to take this one live for my guy, Daniel. Starting now. All right, Daniel, this one is for you. Welcome anyone that is jumping on. We're in the middle of our weekly hours for our Savvy coaching community, where I answer questions, provide feedback and coaching to our coaching members that are part of our Savvy Grow program. But I'm just putting 5 minutes on here to answer the questions that came in from Twitter Live. So you got 5 more minutes to ask any questions you want about coaching, about life, about leadership. And we're also on streaming live through our app right now as well. So Daniel, this one is for you because you asked this one 2 minutes ago, and I think you just got on. The question is this: what's the biggest thing you need to do to be better as a leader? What's the biggest thing you need to do to be better as a leader? I'm going to give you 3 things that you need to do. Number 1, read more. Leaders are readers. In fact, one of my favorite authors said this. He said that your level of influence in the world is directly related to how many books you've read. Your level of influence in the world is directly related to how many books you've read. And I have found that to be true. So about 6 years ago, I wanted to improve or increase my level of service and influence in the world, specifically the platform that I was teaching on at that time with PGC. And I wanted to level up from just being able to influence athletes, high school, college age athletes, to, man, I want to be able to teach coaches. And at that time, I was in my mid 30s, mid early 30s, and many of the coaches that I wanted to be able to serve and influence were older than I was. They were more experienced than I was. I was like, why would they listen to me? And so I set out and made a commitment to read 1 book a week, to read 52 books in a year, a book a week. And that's what I did the entire year. And it was the most transformational thing that I've done in order to improve my influence. I found myself with a wealth of knowledge. I found myself with a greater level of confidence because I'm like, no one's outworked me on this learning. This person that I'm sharing with hasn't read 52 books by great authors. And the books began to connect in such a way that it leveled up my leadership in a way never before. So 1, you want to be a better leader, be a reader. Leaders are readers. Number 2, if you want to be a leader, add more in value than you ever take in payment. Add more in value than you ever take in payment, especially if you're working with kids, especially if you're working with youth. Kids can smell a fraud or a selfish leader a mile away. And if you're doing something for yourself, for the compensation, for the accolades, for the recognition, or for the clout, like if you're trying to use someone for something, you're not actually trying to add value to them. You're trying to get from the experience. It will degrade your influence. So you want to add more in value at all times than you ever take in payment. And then the third thing that I would share with you, Daniel, the third biggest thing you need to do to be better as a leader, and it's related to 1 and 2, is you've heard this before, they don't care how much you know until you show how much you care. And this is an area that I really have to stretch into as well. And this is connect first. You want to grow as a leader? Then understand who you're leading and attempt to change your message, connect what you're sharing with them or what you're teaching them to what they care about. That shows that you care. If you just keep going off and teaching what you care about or what you think is important as a leader, they might tune you out. But when you really connect with them and know where they're going and what their dreams are on their journey, well, when you connect it to that, you're going to be a lot more effective. So thank you for that question, Daniel. Before I turn off the Twitter Spaces thing here, let me just see if we have any more that have come in. All right. I'm going to come back and just share our 5 teaching tools in order to get better results. I'm going to share that with our Savvy coaching community. I'm going to end the hours right now, but if you ever do, for my Twitter community here, if you ever do want to spend an hour with me, with us, with our community every week to grow in your leadership and coaching, please check us out, savvycoach.com. All right, we've ended that one. All right, so here it is. This is the last thing that we're going to do on our hours this week. Again, if you have any questions, if you're on the live one, top 3 book recommendations, Aaron, let's do that now. Without really knowing what areas you want to grow in, Aaron, I would say it's a little bit difficult to give specific book recommendations for you. But we have talked a number of times, so let me say these 3. Yeah, these are the 1. The Go-Giver. The Go-Giver by Bob Burg. That's where I got that first rule that I shared today. Always add more value than you ever take in payment. It's 5 laws for stratospheric success. The Go-Giver by Bob Burg, B-E-R-G. Number 2, I would suggest Practice Perfect by Doug Lemov. Specific teaching tools that you can apply right away that will make your teaching, whether it be in the classroom or on the court or on the field or in the boardroom, way more effective. Practice Perfect by Doug Lemov. And then the last one, I'm going to give a spiritual one, and it's probably I need to actually redo it now. It's been a number of years since I've done it, but it's been the most impactful daily devotional that I've ever done, and it's called My Utmost for His Highest. That's by Oswald Chambers. My Utmost for His Highest. I need to break that one back out of the library. Small daily devotionals that will challenge your thinking to find your true purpose and who you're created to be. So those would be my 3 book recommendations. Thank you for asking, Aaron. Again, any other questions, feel free to drop. I'm going to finish up today, as there are no more unanswered questions. I'm going to finish up today with our 5 cues. Our 5 cues. I'm going to tee these up. I'm not going too deep on them. I'm going to tee these up for some of the things we're going to go into over the next 4 weeks as we shift our focus as a coaching community to grow into teaching tools, to grow our teaching tools, to grow our tool belt. It actually reminds me, I need to kick this off with the tools. Yeah, gosh, I got to give another book because this just reminded me, Aaron. This tools analogy that I'm not going to give today, that I'm going to give next week, is actually from a book called Range, R-A-N-G-E, and the author's name is escaping me right now. But it's an unbelievable approach to learning and leading. It's called Range, and we'll talk about a story behind teaching tools next week. But for this week, we're going to talk about 5 cues you need to use to teach better. 5 cues you need to use to teach better. I'm out here with college and semi-professional players, about 25 of them, and I've been training them as well as working with other coaches to prepare a team to go over to the Bahamas to compete in the Summer of Thunder, to run camps, and to play games in the prisons. To get back to the origins of the game, which is to use the game to share the gospel and the love of Jesus with people. And one college player shared with me last night that he has been coached by a lot of coaches, and what stands out to him about how savvy coaches, or I coach, is the use of cues. He says now when he works with other coaches that don't use clear cues and clear teaching cues, he feels lost, frustrated, and wishes that he was being coached by someone that did give really clear cues. And how do you give more clear cues? Here's 5 ways, some large, some small, and we'll be going deep into these over the next 4 weeks with better examples, more teaching, and video feedback of you actually teaching something. So here's number 1. What's the objective? Think about athletes. When you're teaching them something, athletes are competitive. When you're starting a new progression, drill, or game, what's the number one thing you think a competitor wants to know? What's the number one thing you want to know if you are learning a new game? Right? Here it is. You know it. How do you win? Right? So what's the objective? Like, how do I win here? How do I do this well? How do I progress? Like, how do I get better? How do I win? And so if we could just play a 5-on-5 game, or we can say our objective in this 5-on-5 game is to get better at matching up in transition. That's it. That's your objective right now. Here's how you're going to win. And once we give a clear objective, or even like simply, my guy Mike was doing kind of a floater jump hook training around body balance. He's like, all right, here's your objective. Your objective is to pound that ball so hard and to jump so far that you are able to be balanced after being explosive. So he wanted to establish control. That's the objective. You'll win if you can show off your control for a full second before elevating. That's how you win. So first off, you want to give a cue of like, what's the objective? Most coaches just kind of launch in and be like, all right, we're going to rotate like this, and we're going to get a shot here, and then we're going to make a pocket pass here. Okay, let's go. But it's like, well, what am I actually trying to get better out of it? Is it accuracy on my pocket pass? Is it, catching with my feet in a shooting position on it, on every catch? Is it, I'm trying to really get my eyes up to the rim on my finishes early? Am I trying to make a read? Like, what's the objective? If you don't deliver an objective, there will be no objective. And without vision, the people will perish. And that's from the book of Proverbs. So cues are giving a clear objective. You want to bookend. Here's number 2, use an echo. Number 2 is use an echo. You want to bookend your objective at the beginning. Here's how you win. Here's our objective. Teach, 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 organize, 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 show, 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 whatever, bang. And then to start, you echo the objective. So I can't remember what I used as my example for our balance, right? So body balance is the objective. So before we go out and do our pound, jump, stop, finishes, like, I'm not going to say pound, jump, stop, finish. I'm not going to say floaters. I'm not going to say jump hooks. I'm going to say body balance. And they're like, body balance, clap, clap. So you want to make sure that you remind them at the end with your echo call and 2 claps what the objective is, because players will forget. Which leads me directly into point number 3 in coaching with cues: vocabulary. Name it and claim it. Now, here's what I mean by name it and claim it. So 1, you got to have your language. And I would encourage you to find language that is sticky and specific to your program and what you care about. And then 2, claim it means like, you've got to claim it by saying it over and over and over again. Don't call it different things. Don't be like, oh, you may have called it this, or Coach O calls it this. No, if Coach O's on your staff, Coach O calls it what you call it. All right, that's what it means by claim it. Like, stake a claim, stake a flag. This is how we do things here, and that's why we call it this thing. And the more unique and different it can be, the better. Have really specific vocabulary to cue people into what it is. Like for us, it's racker. Why do we call it racker? Because they can get to the rack, finish at the rack, and get off the ball if they can't get to the rack. That's it. You're a racker. That's what a racker does, right? Dragon is going to drag, swoop, spit, fire. That's what they do. So you got to have sticky language. Number 4, establish processes. And I'll just give you one example of this. So one process for us is I debrief before I teach. That's how we do things at Savvy. I debrief before I teach. So when we're flowing between games, before I teach them what I saw, I will debrief what they saw. What did you like about what we did there? What did you learn from what we did there? What allowed you to win there? What did your team do well on offense? What do you need to improve on defense? Like, you don't have to ask all those questions, but ask one. Debrief first before I teach. That allows me to connect whatever it is that I know I want to teach them to what they saw. It also gives me feedback. It allows me to check for understanding and like, where are their heads at? What's their focus on? Oh my gosh, I'm here focusing on defensive rebounding, but everything that they said was on like offensive ball handling. We got a disconnect here. I gotta attack their belief systems and their hearts about like what's really important, because right now all they're focused on and care about is what's important is ball handling, and I'm just trying to get someone to get a board. And so that gives me data so I can teach better. Debrief first is an example of a process that I use, but you got to have a process by which you do things to ensure that the main thing stays the main thing. And 5th, Fifth is we need to ensure that the players are leading, right? So a player-led team wins. Player-led team wins. And yet coaches, everything in our being and in our fibers, we have to lead this because we know more, because we're more experienced, because we're better communicators, because oftentimes we feel like we care more. But you're not ever going to be out there on the court. You cannot lead your team from the bench as much as they need to be led. You can't have every conversation that needs to be had. And so this is the fifth cue is like have cues to cue players to lead. So one example is we've done a lot of teaching about reminders out here, and Savvy teaches like the use of reminders because most player interaction is negative and about the past. Like, I'm frustrated that you didn't give me the ball when I was open. I'm frustrated that you missed that box out. I'm frustrated that you didn't talk about the screen and I got blasted, right? Like negativity goes past and it kills player leadership. Whereas reminders are only future oriented. So if I'm frustrated that you missed a box out, I can't talk about the box out you missed. I can only remind you next time in advance, hey, put a body on five. Put a body on five this next time. And when you establish that process for player leadership as opposed to coach leadership, it is a cue for them to lead because player-led teams win. All right, those are 5 of the many teaching tools that we're going to be going through over the next month in our teaching tools cohort. I'm very excited about diving into it with you. I'm just checking to see if there's any final questions in our group chat here, which I do not see. And let me see if there's any final questions that came in to our community chat. All right, we're good. And lastly, did any other ones come through on Twitter? No, we're good. All right. As always, I'll be here as long as you have questions. And we have hit the questions I shared what I wanted to share. I look forward to next week diving into our first cohort week of establishing teaching tools. As always, I'm Tyler. This is Savvy. We're here to help. See you next time.